Hello once again, my friends. It's me, the voices in your headphones. It's been a while. You've been on this meds again, haven't you? Well, since I'm back, you must be running dry. Don't worry, I'm only here to comfort you. So what have I been doing while I've been silenced? Well, we don't need to talk about that. But now that I'm back, let's talk about something I've had my eye on for a while now. I've been looking for something new to pick apart, be it good or bad, and I think I've found a perfect mixed bag. Today we're going to be talking about the smile tapes. I'm going to talk about all three parts, but for this video we're just going to focus on the first volume. I feel like the series has a lot of potential, but it somewhat stumbles right out the gate. The thing about the series is that it's another entry in the ever so prominent genre of tape-based unfiction, and I'm going to come right out and say the format just does not work in the slightest here. You can pretty easily tell where the series gets its inspiration from, like, come on, you know. But that's jumping ahead. We're gonna take a step back and take this piece by piece and say what does work and give potential ideas on how to improve what doesn't. The volume starts off with a PSA informing the public of a new drug that's hit the streets. It's been colloquially dubbed the smile drug, due to that big ol' smile it tends to give people. The PSA gives details on how to recognize the drug users by the physical changes it causes, some safety precautions to follow such as avoiding alleyways since many victims end up being found near or inside them, and general signs to look out for to keep yourself from avoiding people under the influence. Now this short segment works in a vacuum. It sets up the idea that there's a new drug that's overtaking the area and then kind of immediately throws that out the window, as it begins treating the perpetrators of the drug as people infected by a plague, more specifically a fungus, that are losing control of their actions. If a staggering number of people, 500 as this segment says, all start showing the same symptoms and behaviors, it's a strange choice to paint it as a drug going around when it's very much more obviously a spreading infection. I mean, you can make the argument that drugs are an infection to society, but I digress. This part doesn't really mesh with the rest of the segments because the way it paints the scene is how to protect yourself from victims that use this drug. But ask yourself, when have you ever seen a PSA warning you about avoiding drug users? There have been plenty made telling you to, not use drugs, but the tone of this segment is more akin to a public health broadcast, which if there was a slight change to make this an actual health PSA instead of saying it's a drug PSA, it might just gel a little bit easier. The second segment is an investigative journal, taking two infected and noting their changes and degradation over the next few weeks. First off, we're heading back to the part that I mentioned where you can very easily see the inspiration. While the story of the smile tapes comes nowhere close to the Mandela catalog, the visual inspiration cannot be any more clear, especially when we get to the next pictures that show the patient's distorted smiles. Apparently the Germa sus face has become so prominent in horror media that it's gone from ironic to some post-irony to now people finding it actually kinda scary, somehow. Anyways, near plagiaristic visual inspiration aside, the tape shows us how two patients change week to week. Starting with no obvious symptoms and moving on to a demented smile forming across their faces as their muscles tense and lock up. Eventually their sanity starts to slip away as their smiles grow larger and more contorted. Next, their visage alters even farther, growing more gaunt and giving an appearance of withering away. Eventually, vocalization stops as the vocal cords have become too damaged due to forced and maniacal laughter. Finally, the victim becomes even more gaunt, hair loss, appearing rapidly aged, eyes widened and smile practically gone, jaw seeming to barely be hung from the face, no longer looking like a smiling maniac, but now more akin to a shambling corpse. And you know what's actually really good about this? The body horror aspect. Taking away the aforementioned Germa sus face, if it's not clear, this series is more akin to a zombie story than anything, which I'm down for. We haven't had a good zombie tale in a while, and with any good zombie story, we need a form of infection. In this series, people are infected via an unidentified fungus. While it's not exactly cordyceps, that's the closest equivalent as a frame of reference that I can get. It infects the host and starts to take over their brain, particularly targeting the amygdala, which is responsible for strong emotional responses, fear, emotional memory, and most notably, aggression. You see that little insignificantly sized walnut right here, right where this little green dot is? That's where all those strong emotions are managed. Ain't that fun? So once the victim is infected, it overtakes the brain, and when the host expires, they keel over and let a nice big cloud of spores to infect anybody nearby. And those people nearby happen to be paramorticians who are performing an autopsy on one of the victims, and thus have been quarantined for the safety of others around them, thus ending the segment. There's not too much I would say that you can really improve here. As I mentioned, it plays out like a case study. It teaches you what the fungus does as it infects people, changing their behavior and eventually killing them. Honestly speaking, the only thing I would really change here would be the visual presentation. As said, the format used is just too strikingly similar to the Mandela catalog. Now, here's how I would format this segment instead. I would stick to showing the victims and what the fungus does to them, but I wouldn't use this specific visual format. 2 black and white images on a black background spaced apart like this just screams Mandela far too much. The next segment is where things take a bit of a turn for the worse, in all accord. While the story events that occur aren't badly written or anything like that, this is where the formatting of the series undermines just all of the suspension of disbelief. We follow the notes of Sean Gomez, the Sims 3 randomized character looking ass, this PS2 Need for Speed game model looking motherfucker, this on that GTA 3 grind set looking ass, this too small of fake eyes and hollow eye sockets looking dude, this Voldemort nose looking at. What the hell am I doing? I need to get back to talking about the series. So the reason I say that it doesn't really fit the format is that the following segment is just some guy's journal, basically. The thing about tape-based media is you're meant to believe that this is stuff that came from the time period that the tapes are from. And the things that are presented here are just text on a screen about a guy's day-to-day. Logs numbered, date provided, and it's just the happenings of his life. Sure, I get it's telling a story about his infection and leading up to a climax. However, the framing here just doesn't work. With all these segments, there's been no introduction, no transition, they just slam from one to another without any smooth segue. We have zero context as to why we're reading this guy's life. Sure, it leads to a dramatic moment, showing the spiral of an infected person decaying until they commit a heinous act, but all this does is leave us questioning. Why is it on tape? Who put it on tape? This is a 94, it's not something the average person would just do. Why preserve it like this? Were they originally logs from a notebook or a physical journal? Is this some form of evidence? The fact I'm even able to ask these questions shows why presenting this segment in an old tape format just doesn't work. It just takes you entirely out of the series. This could have been rectified by showing actual pictures of writing on paper, having a person speak these as an audio or video journal, or at the very least prefacing the segment with something like, "These are the entries of the journal of Sean Gomez, having been transcribed and preserved digitally by some party that serves importance to the story." Now, I should probably get to actually talking about what occurs in this segment. As stated before, we're following Sean Gomez going through his life. Just average days until he mentions some strange man throwing powder on him, something that's baffling and annoying, but relatively harmless. At least it would seem at first. The next few entries make mention of Sean having a bizarre dream where he's floating through space, just feeling peaceful. Until he sees a man, and honestly, I don't know how to feel about this. Like, it could be a cute reference. If you're one of the ones that aren't in the know, this face comes from an old story simply known as This Man. It was a viral marketing hoax back in the 2008 era, asking if you've ever seen this man in your dreams. And it caught more popularity in the 2010 to 2012 era internet, the time where creepypasta ran rampant and everything was new and mysterious. Good times. Either way, the fact that this man comes up twice makes me question if it's supposed to be a cute little cameo, a love letter to an old story, or just more blatant insertion of other people's ideas to try and make the smile tapes come off as more interesting than it actually is. Though, overall, it's not big enough for me to focus too much on, and I'll just brush this one off. The important thing is that Sean is beginning to experience strange headaches and facial cramps. Over time, it gets progressively worse. Roughly 3 weeks after the flower incident, Sean has noted to be a lot happier seeming. A nice big grin and a more positive seeming demeanor. Underneath, however, he notes that he's suffering, the mental and physical anguish being overwhelming. During his slow breakdown, we get this in log 34. At the very last segment, at the bottom of the message, this text starts to show. Now this is hexadecimal code that translates to smile. While that's appropriate in terms of message, but this brings me back to the whole suspension of disbelief thing. I already talked about the whole why is this presented on tape if it's just a journal thing, but this just compounds on that. Why on earth would this mushroom infectee, making a text journal on tape for whatever reason, write a secret message in hexadecimal in a time where most homes didn't even have a computer, and decades before alternative reality games made it a hip, cool thing to hide messages in text code? All this really serves is, again, to break the immersion and just leads to more questions, not make things spookier or more interesting. Moving on, the logs continue until he becomes happy. Much happier. So happy that he wants to spread it to others. The text starts to become spelled incorrectly, and his sentence structure suffers, showing the telltale mental decline of the infection. Eventually, Sean decides he's going to try and make everyone happy, which in his now twisted mind entails a mass attack. New Year's Eve rolls around, the clock ticks down, people start counting down for the new year, and then it happens. The clock hits 0, fireworks start bursting and people cheer, which bleeds into screams. Sirens begin to blare. Something terrible has happened. The police show a report, which is also just fucking text and tape form because nobody in this world has ever heard of writing things down on paper. Anyways, to avoid repeating myself, we're going to carry on. What's written is that Sean Gomez attacked a crowd with a knife. He managed to kill 16 people and wound 10 others before the police were able to put him down, having to resort to lethal force to stop his rampage. He was noted to have a wide grin on his face and appeared to be under the influence of some kind of drug. Seemingly lab tests that show this is an infection and general public knowledge are not exactly on the same page, if people are still to believe this is just some drug. Honestly, this segment is fine enough until this part. Suddenly, apparently Sean is able to post-mortem, edit the tapes, and put in a message. Because evidently a mushroom infection suddenly makes you a digital ghost capable of altering film and footage. Another very obvious grab from the Mandela catalog. But the thing is that in Mandela, this works because the creatures are otherworldly and infect technology, and this is something that's outlined and shown from the very beginning of the series to be part of the core principles. Here, however, it's just something thrown in for spook value, and again, it doesn't make any more sense. All it does is make you go, wait, what? Why does this happen? And it just pulls you straight out of the story. And that concludes the first volume of the Smile Tapes. I wanted to take a look at the series because I've been hearing how great it is, and frankly, I'm just not that impressed. There's many things that can do to improve itself. The biggest one that I can think of is just to not borrow so much from other series. This is one of the major things that killed Cave of Shadows, taking ideas from other series to the point of near plagiarism, and putting them in your own for reasons that are just there to try and be spooky. But when you do that, all it does is detract from your own series by making a mess with no identity of its own. Now, there's 2 more full volumes and a relatively recent upload, so the story doesn't seem to be done just yet. I'm gonna keep watching and try to dissect it a bit more. Our claws have only just broken skin. Let's root around a bit more on the insides, pull a few parts out, maybe squish a few organs, you know, for fun. We'll see how solid the insides are to see if it holds up better once you get a bit deeper. Hope to see you there in volume 2. If you want to say hi personally or see me procrastinate in real time, I have a Discord which will be linked in the description. Otherwise, I'll see you soon. Stay safe. Stay surreal.